Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Let's begin. First up, we begin with breaking news. Trump forces Sessions out aimed criticism over Russia. Let's take a listen to the video from ABC News.
This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Muir from ABC News headquarters here in New York. We are interrupting regularly scheduled programming to bring you breaking news at this hour. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has now resigned at the request of the president. It takes effect immediately. President Trump wasting no time, beginning to reorganize his cabinet after yesterday's midterm election. As you know, his relationship with Attorney General Sessions has been contentious for quite some time. The president never forgiving him for recusing himself in the Russia investigation. It was just a short time ago we were carrying the news conference, President Trump turning away questions about whether he would replace Sessions. But he has now tweeted the news announcing that Matthew Whitaker, Chief of Staff to Sessions, will actually become the new acting Attorney General. I want to get right to our Chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl, because this came swift after this news conference where he would not take questions on Sessions.
It sure did, David, and I am told that this was directly in response to a request from the president asking for that letter of resignation, asking him to resign. I'm told it will take place effective immediately. The president had been furious at his attorney general really for about a year and a half, ever since he recused himself after he became attorney general. And I had a rather extensive conversation with somebody familiar with Sessions' thinking on all of this, who said that throughout the last year and a half, while the president, and many times in very public ways, eviscerated him and that move of recusing himself from the Russia investigation, that the president never directly brought those concerns up with Sessions, never once called Sessions to complain about it. And over all of this time, he never asked Sessions to resign. So the request finally came after the midterm elections, and Sessions responded immediately to resign. It's interesting, David, in the letter of resignation that Sessions turned into the White House to the president, he said in part, he talked about his legacy as Attorney General, implementing the president's agenda, but then he said, most importantly, in my time as Attorney General, we have restored and upheld the rule of law, a glorious tradition that each of us has a responsibility to safeguard. And I am told by, again, somebody familiar with Sessions' thinking, that he never once had any second thoughts about his decision to recuse himself from the Russia investigation or how he handled it. He simply believed that in terms of rule of law, he was somebody that was in the leadership of the Trump campaign, that it would be entirely inappropriate for him to have anything to do with supervising an investigation into that campaign's activities.
All right, never any second thoughts to recuse.
Okay, and there you go on that breaking news. Again, Attorney General Jeff Sessions is out. He resigns at the request of President. Sununu says he's ready to work with Democratic legislation. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9, Ray Brewer.
Out the door when it matters most. For more than a decade, he's been right there, everywhere. And when American jobs are on the line, he leads the charge. ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast, and we thank you.
The governor says he hasn't reached out to any Democratic leaders yet, but he has made phone calls to Republican colleagues, many of whom won't be with him when the new legislature convenes. The morning after winning re-election, Governor Chris Sununu made his way to the local store for a morning cup of coffee and a bit of celebration. In New Hampshire, voters flipped control of the state legislature from Republicans to Democrats. The governor bucking that Democratic wave, taking 53% of the vote.
It's not just about parties, it's about the actual individual running for office, and that's whether it's a local office or a state office, House of Representatives, Executive Council, whatever it might be.
The governor says he's more than willing to work with the Democratic majority, but it looks like he will have enough Republicans to sustain a veto, which he says he won't hesitate to issue.
At the end of the day, as a governor, you have to make tough decisions sometimes, and if you have to veto something, you do, but I'm always confident we can work it out.
The governor says he'll continue to push his priorities, such as making sure taxes aren't raised and regulations don't increase. But he believes that both Democrats and Republicans will come together to move the state forward, adding that one of the focuses of the new legislature will need to be on maintaining New Hampshire's strong economy.
You need to work at that. You need to create that infrastructure that keeps that opportunity going. Opioids, obviously, another very big issue.
But it all starts with a positive attitude.
Working together, both with our party, across party lines, and making sure New Hampshire really is an example for the rest of the country in terms of good governance and good leadership.
The governor says he does plan on going to the State House later this afternoon to get some work in, but today mainly is about catching your breath after our long, hard campaign season. In Newfield's Ray Brewer, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Custer Pappas ready to head to Washington. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9, Kristen Carosa.
The perfect time to join Planet Fitness and find your happy pace. Join today for just 25 cents down, $10 a month, no commitment. Planet Fitness, the judgment-free zone.
Join Planet Fitness for 25 cents down and $10 a month, no commitment. Offer ends November 14th.
Democrat Chris Pappas made his way to the Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College in Manchester just hours after winning the 1st Congressional District.
People wanted their voices heard, and they spoke up loud and clear. I think the message is they want people to work together to get the job done, whether it's in Concord or in Washington.
And now, Pappas is looking forward to working on several of his priorities.
Addressing the opioid crisis, ensuring that we improve veterans' health care services, invest in our transportation infrastructure, and work on health care.
Congresswoman Annie Custer headed to the Common Man restaurant to celebrate. She has just won her 4th term in Congress in the 2nd District. Custer says she wants to focus on veterans' issues, bringing down the cost of prescription drugs, and work on tackling the opioid crisis.
Getting a handle on the opioid epidemic and really turning the tide. You know, we got some good news this week that the deaths are down, but let's solve that. Let's get people the treatment they need and long-term recovery. And
both say there's work ahead of them, with Republicans still in control of the U.S. Senate.
The Constitution created this system so that we would come together. And, the president will have a seat at the table, and hopefully we'll get some solutions for the American people.
It's time for people to step up to the plate and to focus on their districts and the need of people back home.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And I want to show you something that I saw on Twitter today. What Secretary of State's race, Bill Gardner, says he won't start campaigning until all counts are finished, saying trust in the election process is paramount. let's take a look, listen to the video on Twitter.
The role of the Secretary of State is to be an umpire at recounts. You have to call ballots. You have to call ballots that, whether a mark is an erasure or you can't be part of a political fray. You have to have candidates across the board feel there's trust, integrity in the process. That's not the nature. It's the opposite of what this office is supposed to be about.
Okay, and there you go on that. And as you know, his seat is up, and there's going to be some people running against him. 11 schools in Conville District closed Wednesday because of threat. Conville Regional High School and 10 other schools in the district were closed Wednesday after officials discovered an online threat, according to the superintendent's office. The online threat, which was discovered at about 6 a.m., was made against the students and staff at the high school, officials said. Officials made the decision to close the high school and the 10 other district schools out of an abundance of caution, officials said. There were about 150 middle and high school students in the district on buses when the alert went out at 6:40 a.m. and buses turned around and brought them back home, officials said. Bennington, Antrim, and Peterborough police are investigating. Students involved in the threat are being questioned, according to the superintendent. School officials said later in the day that the alleged threat had been addressed. School officials said classes will resume Thursday with some extra staff members on hand. And now let's take a look at your U.S. stock market and see how your U.S. stock market closed for this Wednesday evening. And here's a look at that U.S. stock market for all of you. Your Dow Jones Industrial Average closed in the green and went up. Your Nasdaq closed in the green and went up. S&P 500 closed in the green and went up. Gold closed in the green and went up. Oil closed in the red and went down. U.S. 10-year closed in the green and went up. Euro/USD closed in the green and went up. And VIX closed in the red and went down. S&P 500 and Dow surge in best rally after midterm elections since 1982. U.S. stocks closed broadly higher on Wednesday after the midterm election results came in about as expected, lifting a cloud of uncertainty that was weighing on the market. Pelosi on speakership bid. It's what you can do. Let's take a listen to the video from ABC News.
Was not only a vote to protect America's health care, it was a vote to restore the health of our democracy. The American people want to put an end to unchecked GOP control of Washington, restoring again the checks and balances envisioned by our founders. That's a responsibility we have when we take that oath to protect and defend the Constitution. And we as Democrats are here to strengthen the institution in which we serve and not to have it be a rubber stamp for President Trump. We will strive for bipartisanship. We believe that we have a responsibility to seek common ground where we can. Where we cannot, we must stand our ground, but we must try. And so openness and transparency, accountability, bipartisanship, a very important part of how we will go forward.
To follow up on what the president said this morning, he made clear that if Democrats launch investigations, that any hopes for bipartisanship is off. Do you have any concerns that these investigations could jeopardize your opportunities to legislate?
This doesn't mean we go looking for a fight, but it means that if we see a need to go forward, we will. If, in fact, it requires a subpoena, I hope not, but so be it. I heard the president say, I deserve to be the speaker. I don't think anybody deserves anything. It's not about what you have done, it's what you can do. What you have done in the past speaks to your credentials, but it's about what you can do, and I think I'm the best person to go forward.
Okay, and there you go on that video. And that does it for the Riley King Newscast right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all have a wonderful night, everyone. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another newscast. And I'll have a news report coming up later on. Good night, everyone. Bye.